Welcome to Deep Dive, a sort of personal project that I felt I had to share. I have more than 30 books in queue and probably another 30 topics that I want to learn more about. And sometimes I want to hear a summary before I invest a couple of days of deep dive. This podcast is a result of that need. With the help of some Google apps and tools, what you have here is a podcast format that is surprisingly entertaining, even if it's a bit comprehensive. For this episode, we talk about Civilization 1. Our sources are Civilization 1, The World is Not As You Thought It Was, Uncovering the Super Science of Prehistory by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler, and Who Built the Moon by Alan Butler and Christopher Knight.
You know how it is, right? You're trying to really get your head around a complex subject, maybe something with a ton of history, and you just want to cut through the noise, find the core ideas, the connections, without drowning in information.
Absolutely. That's what we aim for here.
So today, we're taking that deep dive approach into something, well, truly ancient and honestly pretty mind-blowing.
We really are. We've got some fascinating source material our listeners shared, looking at measurement systems from, well, way back.
Way back.
We'll be focusing mainly on two systems. The megalithic system, the Neolithic Britain and France, and then the later Sumerian and Babylonian systems from Mesopotamia.
Exactly. And the mission here, kind of sparked by that book Civilization 1 by Knight and Butler, is to see if there's hidden knowledge packed into how these ancient people measured things.
Right, looking for links to the Earth, the Moon, maybe even the cosmos itself. Unexpected connection.
Yeah, those aha moments. Let's see what pops out. Okay, so maybe first, who were these people? It's easy to think of them as, well, primitive.
That's a common misconception. But the evidence keeps pointing towards a much more sophisticated understanding than we usually give them credit for.
I mean, just think about language. Spoken language goes back maybe 2 million years with Homo erectus.
That slight change, the lower larynx position.
Yeah. Suddenly allows for way more sounds, right? And boom, vocabulary takes off. That's a massive leap in intelligence and communication.
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
And we have to remember, Homo sapiens, our species, we haven't really changed much mentally or physically for over 100,000 years.
That's the kicker, isn't it? The people living tens of thousands of years ago, Paleolithic humans, they had the same basic brain power we do now.
Pretty much, yeah.
It really puts our modern tech revolution in perspective. You look at some modern hunter-gatherer groups, maybe in Australia or South America.
Right, still living a sort of Stone Age existence, technologically speaking.
But the innate intelligence, the potential, it's clearly always been there.
Precisely. And they express that intelligence in some remarkable ways, like Dr. Rappengoek's work, University of Munich.
On the Lascaux caves? Yeah.
He found that horse drawing, 16,000 years old. It's likely not just art.
What is it then?
Looks like a carefully recorded lunar calendar. Think about that early writing, sophisticated astronomy, 16,000 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the stage. Let's move into the megalithic system then. Alexander Thom's work seems crucial here.
Absolutely crucial. He studied sites like Cowanish in Scotland, these huge stone circles and alignments.
And found they weren't just random piles of rock.
Far from it, meticulously designed. Showed advanced geometry, astronomy, really skilled surveying. These people knew what they were doing.
And he proposed this unit, the megalithic yard.
Yes, the megalithic yard. He calculated it at about 0.83 meters, roughly.
Okay.
And his big idea was that it wasn't arbitrary. It might have been based on observing the heavens, specifically Earth's rotation.
Right, let's dig into that. We use 360 degrees in a circle, but Tom suggested maybe they use 366.
Exactly. And think about it. The Earth spins roughly 366 times relative to the stars in 1 year.
Those are the sidereal days, you mean? Slightly shorter than our 24-hour day.
Correct. So for people watching the stars very closely, a 366 division system, it actually makes a kind of astronomical sense, doesn't it?
It does. So why 360 then? Why did that become standard?
Well, the sources, Knight and Butler, suggest it might have been a later simplification. 360 divides more easily, makes the math simpler for trade and administration, maybe.
Practical reasons potentially took over from the pure astronomical observation. Interesting.
But if they were using 366 degrees, did it connect to anything else?
This is where it gets wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Earth's polar circumference. Modern value is around 40,008 kilometers.
Right. Now take Tom's megalithic yard. and apply this hypothetical megalithic geometry, 366 degrees times 60 minutes times 6 seconds.
Okay, I'm following.
And multiply that whole structure by 366 megalithic years per second of arc.
And what do you get?
You get a figure for the Earth's circumference that's incredibly close to the modern value, like less than 0.0005% difference.
Get out. Seriously.
Seriously. It implies they knew the size of the Earth with stunning accuracy millennia ago.
How is that even possible? We don't have records explaining it, do we?
No written record spelling out 366 times 60 times 6 foot. But the math, the sheer accuracy of that result, it's powerful circumstantial evidence for, well, some very advanced knowledge.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown already. And they might have used pendulums, too.
That's another fascinating idea from Knight and Butler. I mean, think about erecting those massive standing stones perfectly upright.
You'd need a plumb line, right? Which is basically a stationary pendulum.
Exactly. And those little stones with holes drilled in them found at the sites.
Yeah, usually called loom weights or something.
They could be, or they could be pendulum bobs.
Yeah.
Maybe for plumb lines, maybe for something more complex like timekeeping or measuring length.
Okay, how would that work?
Well, they propose a method. Imagine watching a star pass between two markers set up to represent 1366 the horizon. Their calculations suggest a pendulum swinging exactly 366 times during that passage would have a very specific length.
And that length is?
Almost exactly half a megalithic yard.
Whoa. So they could potentially derive their fundamental unit of length directly from watching the stars and timing it with a simple pendulum.
That's the hypothesis. Linking time, space, and the cosmos through basic observation and mechanics. It's ingenious if true.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly, eastward to the Sumerians, after the Neolithic, maybe 12,000 years ago.
Right, Mesopotamia, known for their advances.
Yeah.
And there's a theory they also might have used Earth's spin for their measurements.
How so? Not the 366 system.
Maybe not directly, but perhaps by tracking Venus.
Venus, Inanna, Ishtar, their queen of heaven. Very important to them.
Extremely. So the hypothesis connects Venus's movement to the Sumerian Babylonian degree, the 13/60th of a circle we still use.
Okay.
It suggests that a specific pendulum, maybe a double Cush length, the Cush being a Sumerian unit, would be 240 times while Venus appeared to move 1 degree across the sky.
Okay, wait. 240 beats for 1 degree of Venus. What does that give you?
It potentially defines their unit of time, a second. And remarkably, the length of that second is incredibly close to our modern second.
No way. Our second might come from Sumerians watching Venus with a pendulum.
It's a compelling connection.
Yeah.
And look how it all ties together. That second, their length unit,
Yeah.
the Cush. Their base, 60 math.
Which is why we have 60 seconds, 60 minutes.
Right. And the 360-degree circle, their division of the day, the Gish, it all seems interwoven, like a single coherent system.
The odds of that all just randomly falling into place seem, well, tiny.
Vanishingly small, you might say. And these systems seem to have left echoes,
Like what?
like British pounds and ounces. We think of them as very British.
Yeah.
Well, historical records show they first popped up as French units at the Champagne trade fairs in the 12th, 13th centuries.
Huh. So units travel, they get adapted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of adaptations and echoes, Thomas Jefferson,
The U.S. president, what's he got to do with this?
well, in the late 1700s, he was looking into standardizing measurements. And independently, he zeroed in on a pendulum.
A pendulum.
Yeah, a seconds rod pendulum, about 1.5 meters long, as a potential basis for units.
Okay.
And then he proposed a decimal system based on it, feet, inches, etc. But get this, his proposed unit, called a decade,
Yeah.
it was equal to 6 Sumerian kush, and his furlong was 600 kush.
Wait, so Jefferson's system, designed centuries later, accidentally mirrored multiples of the ancient Sumerian unit.
It seems so. A clear link to the base 60 system, even though he probably didn't realize the Sumerian connection like we might today. It suggests these old systems had real staying power, deep roots.
It's like these mathematical ideas just resonate through time. Did Jefferson find anything else interesting?
He did. He looked at the old English weights and measures of ordre du poids, Troyan, which everyone thought were just a random mess.
Yeah, they seem chaotic.
But Jefferson saw a pattern. He figured out they were likely based on the weight of the same volume of 2 different standard substances, water and wheat.
Ah, so like a pint of water versus a pint of wheat grains?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It suggests an underlying logic, a deliberate design, not just random historical accidents.
Okay, the logic is deep. But now, cosmic connections. This sounds even bigger.
This is where Knight and Butler really push the boundaries. They propose, okay, brace yourself. that the pound weight we use
Yeah, the pound of du poids.
might be directly related to the mass of the Earth.
What? How?
Their calculation suggests it's almost exactly 10 to the power of 20 part of a slice of the Earth at the equator, where the slice is 1 megalithic second wide.
A megalithic second. Okay, that's based on their 366-degree system.
Right. And the accuracy they claim for this relationship between the pound and Earth's mass is over 99.999%.
I mean, that can't be coincidence, can it? A standard weight unit tied directly to the planet's mass through an ancient measurement system.
It seems highly improbable to be coincidence. And there's more. They look at the speed of light in the atmosphere. It comes out very close to 600 million Sumerian kush per second. And the Earth's speed in orbit around the sun.
Let me guess. A nice round Sumerian number?
Pretty much. Close to 60,000 kush per second.
So speed of light, Earth's orbital speed, both fitting neatly into the ancient Sumerian system.
According to their calculations, yes. It strongly suggests these ancient units weren't just arbitrary, but derived from a deep, perhaps incredibly old, understanding of the solar system itself.
This sounds less like rediscovery and more like inheritance.
That's the implication, isn't it?
Yeah.
It leads to speculation about maybe a lost progenitor civilization, some highly advanced ancient culture that perhaps ceded this knowledge to both the megalithic builders and the Sumerians.
Because it seems to pop up quite suddenly at this level of sophistication.
Exactly. It's a speculative leap, for sure, but the mathematical connections are provocative.
It also makes you think about how they approached math. You mentioned algorithmic versus dialectic.
Right. The sources suggest ancient math was very practical. Algorithmic, focused on solving real-world problems, measuring land, predicting cycles, not like later Greek dialectic math, which was more about abstract proofs and theoretical existence. Different goals, different mindset.
Fascinating distinction. Okay, let's bring in the moon. You mentioned a connection to the number 366 earlier.
Yes, the moon. That number 366, so central to the proposed megalithic system, seems to pop up again.
How so?
Get this. The moon's circumference is almost exactly 3.66 times smaller than the Earth's circumference.
Wait, 3.66? That's uncanny.
Isn't it? And there's more. If you take the moon's equatorial radius, about 17 over 38 kilometers, and apply the principles of megalithic geometry, convert it into megalithic yards,
Does it become a nice, neat number?
it converts to a non-arbitrary figure within that system, yes. Another interlocking piece, seemingly.
So the Earth and Moon are related through this specific megalithic number. The standard theory for the moon's origin, the big whack.
The giant impact theory, yeah.
Does that explain these mathematical ratios?
Not easily. It explains the physical formation, perhaps, but these precise numerical relationships, they aren't an obvious consequence of a random cosmic collision.
Which leads to even more speculation, I bet, like megalithic time and sound.
Exactly. If there's a megalithic degree, 1366 of a circle, maybe there's a megalithic second of arc, and the time it takes Earth to rotate through that tiny angle at the equator,
That would be a unit of
a
time.
megalithic second of time, works out to about 0.65 of our modern seconds.
Okay. And sound.
From there, they theorize a unit of sound, the tom or t, and propose that a frequency of 366, about 560 hertz in our terms, would be, in a sense, in tune with the Earth's spin.
Tuning into the planet's rotation, that's pretty out there.
It is speculative, linking measurement, astronomy, time, and acoustics. But then they point to something intriguing.
What's that?
Traces of this fundamental tempo around 91.5 beats per minute, which is 1 beat per megalithic second, found in ethnic music from all over the world. Andes, Tibet, Siberia, Africa, indigenous Australia.
Seriously. A common underlying rhythm across ancient, unrelated cultures.
That's the claim, hinting at maybe some deep, intuitive connection to the Earth's natural rhythm.
Makes you wonder about other senses too, like sight and sound being linked, maybe through frequency.
The sources touch on that briefly, yeah. Could our perception of color have some resonance with sound frequencies? Pure speculation, but interesting.
And going back to the 366 number, the megalithic year was 366 days.
Seems likely, based on their astronomical alignments. A 366-day ritual year would be very useful for tracking longer cycles, like the Saros cycle for predicting eclipses.
And didn't you mention the Festos disk from Crete?
Yes, that mysterious disk from Minoan Crete. Some researchers argue its symbols represent a calendar system, potentially based on a 366-day year.
Suggesting Minoan Crete might have been another inheritor of this megalithic knowledge.
It's a possible link, yeah. Showing this knowledge might have spread further than just Britain and France.
Even tiny things mattered, right? Like barley seeds in Sumeria.
Absolutely. Even the humble barleycorn was a fundamental unit of weight and possibly length integrated into their system, again, suggesting deliberate design, connecting measurement to the natural world.
Okay, so that covers a lot from Civilization 1. Now, the other source, Who Built the Moon? Same authors, Butler and Knight. The title alone.
It's provocative, isn't it?
Yeah.
It directly asks if the moon is entirely natural.
And it builds on this idea of ancient lunar fascination.
Definitely. It highlights lunar calendars going back maybe 25,000 years, like markings on the Avery-Blanchard bone.
Wow.
And the Venus of Losel carving, maybe 20,000 years old, holding that crescent shape, possibly showing an early link between lunar cycles and human fertility.
Our ancestors were clearly paying close attention to the moon. Eclipses must have been terrifying and awe-inspiring.
Absolutely. The sun vanishing during the day, that would make an impact. And even today, the date of Easter is still calculated using the moon relative to the spring equinox. Lunar cycles remain embedded in our culture.
Jefferson comes up again here too, right? With his pendulum.
Yes. His use of a pendulum for measurement standards gains another layer of meaning when you consider the Earth-Moon system dynamics. And of course, Foucault's pendulum.
The one that swings and visibly shows the Earth turning beneath it.
Right. But then you have Maurice Allay's observations during solar eclipses.
What happened?
He found the Foucault pendulum behaved erratically. The swing plane shifted unexpectedly. It suggests some weird interaction during alignments, some physics we don't quite grasp yet.
More mystery. But the moon's known effects are huge, aren't they?
Yeah.
Stabilizing Earth's tilt.
Absolutely critical. Without the moon's gravity keeping Earth's axial tilt relatively stable, we'd likely have wild climate swings, making complex life much harder, maybe impossible.
And the tides, of course, driving evolution.
A major factor. The intertidal zone, created by lunar tides, is thought to be a key environment where aquatic life could adapt and eventually make the transition to land. It literally shaped life's journey.
And the whole system is dynamic, Earth's spin slowing down, the moon moving away.
Yes, due to that tidal interaction. It's a slow cosmic dance.
Who Built the Moon also talks about the moon's structure being odd.
It does. It presents arguments, based partly on Apollo seismic data, that the moon might be unusually light inside, maybe even partially hollow. Its overall density is surprisingly low for a rocky body its size.
Which again challenges the standard formation theories.
It certainly adds complexity to the picture.
And then there are those studies, maybe controversial, about the full moon affecting behavior. Animal bites, aggression.
Yeah, those correlations pop up in some studies. It's hard to prove direct causation, and there's debate, but it hints at potential subtle biological influences we don't fully understand.
Okay, so pulling this all together, the core idea of who built the moon is a message.
Essentially, yes. That the moon's specific properties, its size, its orbit, its relationship with Earth and the sun might not be accidental, that maybe there's information encoded in it.
Like those incredible ratios.
Yeah.
The moon being 1,400th the sun size and 1,400th the distance, making total solar eclipses possible.
Exactly. That perfect visual fit seems convenient, perhaps too convenient for pure chance.
And they talk about pin numbers for Earth and moon.
Yeah, numbers derived from orbital periods, masses, things like that. And these numbers seem to have strange mathematical properties, tying back into these ancient measurement systems, even the metric system potentially.
Suggesting a megalithic yard, the metric system, they're all part of this message.
That's the bold claim, that these systems, ancient and modern, resonate with the fundamental properties of the Earth-Moon-Sun system in a way that implies design.
And as we said, the standard big whack theory doesn't easily explain all these mathematical harmonies and anomalies.
No, it faces challenges accounting for the moon's specific orbit, its composition, its density, and these numerical relationships.
Which opens the door to, well, really speculative ideas, like conscious design.
That's where the book ultimately leads. Could the moon, and perhaps even the conditions for life on Earth, be the result of some form of deliberate engineering?
They even propose a hypothetical universal constructor agency, or UCA.
Yes, a placeholder name for whatever intelligence might be responsible. They even touch on extremely speculative ideas like advanced beings using time travel.
Okay, that's definitely fringe territory.
Absolutely. Very speculative. They also mention messages potentially encoded in DNA, another angle on intelligent design, but at the biological level.
Mainstream science is obviously going to be very skeptical of all this.
Understandably so. These are extraordinary claims, and they require extraordinary evidence, which is currently lacking in a form conventional science would accept.
But the authors argue for keeping an open mind.
They do. They emphasize looking at the anomalies, the mathematical coincidences, and asking if our current paradigms can really explain them adequately. Sometimes, they argue, the simpler explanation might be the seemingly improbable one.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, we've covered a lot of ground. Ancient measurements echoing planetary motion.
Units like the pound or the cush, potentially linked to Earth's mass or solar system dynamics.
And the moon, with its strange properties and mathematical relationships to Earth and the sun, all tied together by this number 366 from megalithic times.
It's a tapestry of interconnected ideas, suggesting ancient cultures might have known far more than we thought. Hopefully you had some of those aha moments seeing these threads.
Definitely food for thought. And it leaves us with that big question, doesn't it? Are all these intricate patterns, measurement, astronomy, geology, maybe even music and biology, just a massive set of coincidences?
Or do they hint at something deeper? A hidden layer of understanding about our cosmos, maybe even pointing towards that controversial idea of design explored in the sources.
It's a lot to mull over. It definitely challenges standard assumptions.
Absolutely. We definitely encourage you to check out the sources yourself and continue exploring these fascinating and enduring mysteries.